this video, we'll take a quick look at SwiftUI. SwiftUI was announced at WWDC 2019 as a new framework that will eventually replace UIKit, the UI framework we're familiar with today. SwiftUI is the future of app development, not only on the iPhone, but for macOS desktop, iPad, Apple TV, and Apple Watch. UIKit requires you to build out your UX and UI in an imperative format, which means that you need to spell out every step in explicit detail. SwiftUI, on the other hand, is a declarative format, which means that you are describing more of what you want and sort of letting the experts, i.e. the SwiftUI framework, make it for you. Let's use an analogy. For example, if I were to want to order up a grilled cheese sandwich, I could take one of two approaches. I could call my friend up on the phone and give them all the details of how to make the sandwich, including what ingredients to purchase, how to combine the bread and the cheese, add butter to each of the sides of the bread, heat the pan to 250 degrees and grill on one side until golden brown, and then flip and grill again. The alternative is for me to call up the local sandwich shop that specializes in grilled cheese sandwiches and order the sandwich. Now, I might add some additional directives, such as I want to use a specific type of cheese, or I want them to slice my sandwich along the diagonal when they finish before delivering it to me. But basically, I'm saying what I want and letting the sandwich shop deal with all the details. One other assumption I am making is that the sandwich shop specializes in grilled cheese sandwiches. So they're going to be able to do a much better job than me or my explicit directions given to my friend. In Xcode 11 and 12, Apple has built in some truly incredible new features that make UX and UI development so much easier and more reliable, and it makes our apps much lighter weight. Also, we'll be able to build out our UI either by dragging and dropping UI elements onto the iPhone, and Xcode will write the code for us immediately so we can see what code generates the UI we just created. Or we can write code and have the UI immediately reflect what the code is asking for. This ability to go back and forth between code and UI is really quite revolutionary and is one of the big advantages SwiftUI has over UIKit for developers. So enough talking about SwiftUI, let's jump into Xcode and see it in action. So typically the way I launch Xcode is I just do command space and then I start typing in Xcode. Just a couple characters is all I needed, and I have now brought up Xcode. So what I'm going to do is create a new project. And then from here, it's giving me different choices. I'm going to just pick app here for iOS and click next. And then I'm going to give it a name. How about Swift UI demo? And then what we want to make sure here is that we have SwiftUI selected, not storyboard. So we do SwiftUI, and our language is Swift, and we say next. And now we're going to give it a name or a directory. In this case, I've already am at SwiftUI for our directory. So I'll just hit create there. And I will have created a new SwiftUI project. So let me expand this so we can get most of the screen here. And I'm going to hit, so basically what you're seeing right here is a split pane view of code that is basically the start of our app. So you'll see that we still have app delegate up here, but now we have this new thing called content view, and we'll talk about what this is in a second. But then over here on the right is this preview area where we can preview what our code is doing, what the app looks like without actually launching the simulator and going through that whole process. So up here on the right, I'm going to hit resume. And when I hit resume, this will take a few seconds. So this takes a little longer when we first start out in Xcode and we first launch it. After that, this is going to go much quicker. So we'll give that a second to fire up. And there we go. So now we have our iPhone and we have our white screen with Hello World. And if we go over to here, iPod Touch 7th generation, I'm going to just change this to iPhone 11. And now our preview will change to something a little more modern. Okay, so we have hello world right here in the center. And if we come over here to the left, we see we have this new structure called a struct. We're not going to go into all of the details of this for this particular video because I just want to show you the basics of how to get started. But essentially, you'll see right here we have text, hello world, and there is some annotation on here. In fact, let me just take that out to keep this even more simple. But you'll notice up here, if we look up at the top, we can see that we have a green dot here that says preview is working. So for example, if I said, hello, how are you today? As I type it, notice that it actually shows it here. Now, the other cool thing is if I tap on this UI element, notice how it highlighted the text over here on the left. So let's just show you how we can add something new into this and see the code being reflected based on what we've added. So up here in the upper right, by the way, I am running Xcode 12, but this should be similar for 11. I click on this little plus button up here, and it gives me this set of options. All of these are something that you can select. Again, I'm not going to go through all of them. This first one's the one that's most interesting, where we can actually pick UI elements out of here. So let's say I wanted to put another text label in there. So I could type text, and you could see here's text. So this is the text that we want. If I drag this over here, and you notice as I drag it, I'm putting it right here at the bottom, and it's saying down here at the bottom, it's saying add text to a new vertical stack, which it's going to create for us. So we would really have two text fields, one after another, and they would be vertically placed. Or I could come over here to the left and I could put it there, and now it's saying it's going to add a horizontal stack. But let's go ahead and put it right there and let go. And now over here on the right, we see that we have this placeholder text. But look what happened over here on the left. It actually wrote that code for us to create that text field. And it put it in a vertical stack. And a vertical stack, again, when we get into the details of SwiftUI, you'll see that vertical stacks and horizontal stacks are used all the time to kind of place things in our view. So, for example, I could say, this is another field, and sure enough, we have that field right here. So what I want to do is sort of play around a little bit with doing some code here on the left and also making some changes here on the right. And maybe what we can do is we can create a button that actually changes some colors. That might be kind of neat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out, and then I am going to, and notice as I took it out here immediately. So what I want to do is take this text, but I also want to put a little image here, and then this text will be, all of it will actually become part of a button that we can tap, and we can see how we can do that. So what I'm going to do is go up here and hit the plus again, and I'm going to type in image, and I'm going to grab this image, and I'm going to go ahead and again drop it, but I'm going to drop it over here to the left. And so as I dropped it over here to the left, it created a horizontal stack, and see how easy this is to read. We have a horizontal stack made up of an image, and then a vertical stack that would be made up of two different or multiple elements. It's fine that it just has one. So in this case, I'm going to take, since I don't have any images loaded already, I'm going to just take some system images that are already there. And let's see, I think camera is one of them. There is. And so by typing that, I now have a camera image here. And what I want to do is say this text is going to be called change color. And what we might want to do is say, well, we want to change the color of this camera. So one of the things we can do is there are attributes that we can put on this image to change various aspects of how it looks. So one of them could be color. And one way to do that is if I hold the command key down right here and then I click on image, I get this pop-up, and notice I can come down here to the Swift Show Inspector, SwiftUI, and it's showing me different things that I can set on this image. Like I could put padding around it, which would give it a little more padding compared to not being right up against the text. But I want to add a modifier, so I'm going to go down here and click on that, and I'm going to type in foreground color, or just foreground, and I'm going to click on that, and now I've added a foreground modifier here, and I can pick a color, and let's say I want it to be red. So if I click that, and notice over here on the right, I now have a red foreground color for the camera. But what's even more important is look how it added this modifier onto our image, and it actually wrote the code for us, which is great. Now we could come over here and I could really kind of do the same thing. So I'm sitting on this attribute, or I'm sitting on this image right here. I hold down Command and I click and I say show the inspector. Let's say I'm going to make this actually green. So we click on green. Notice it changed this to green here, but also it changed our code. So this is an example of going back and forth between coding something here and having it show up here. So for example, I could add text in here to have more text on another line, or I could just come down here and say text second line like this, and notice how it is creating 2 lines of text. So the other thing we could do is, let's say the second line is something where it looks like it's centering it, and I want these to be sort of left justified. So we can go over here to the VStack, because each of these are sort of standalone. We want them both to be set left justified. So it's probably a property or an attribute of the VStack. So let's check this out. If I hold down the command and hit and click on the VStack, I get, and I go to the inspector, notice up here I see some various attributes that I can set. One of them is alignment. So I can click left here, and sure enough, it added code in here. So VStack alignment leading, and notice over here on the left, now they're left justified. So this gives you an idea. We're building some stuff up vertically with these two, then we're building something up horizontally with our image for our camera, and then we have some text here. And now what we want to do is put this inside of a button. And we can do this in one of several ways, but what I'm going to do is just go here and say, well, maybe I'll just declare a button, which I could do, or I can see what the button code looks like by dropping a button into the UI. So why don't I do that? I'll drop a button in. I'll take a button here, and I'm going to just put it here at the top. And so it's created this VStack again, and now it's created this button, and notice how the button is sitting on top. But the reality is all of this content that we created here in this horizontal stack can become part of the button. So like I could take this, cut this out, and I could paste it here for content, and now all of this is a button. This is all part of the button itself. And I don't need this extra VStack, so I could just delete it. So we'll come down here, take out, any one of these closing brackets. I can do a Control-A and a Control-I, and that will reformat my code. And so we now have this button. So the button basically has 2 parameters. One was this all this content that's in here, but it also has an action. So if I start that, then again, let's format that up. We're really looking at putting some code in here of something that we want to have happen when we tap the button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a property on this view that keeps track of whether the color is green or whether the color is yellow or blue or red or some other color. So what I'm going to do is say var, let's say is red, and it's going to be a bool, and we'll initialize it to false. Now, since we've done that, basically there's 2 things we want to add. And again, we're not going to teach SwiftUI here. I'm going to just say that this is a state variable, and we're going to make it private to the view so it's not accessible from somewhere else. And the state attribute is just saying that this variable, when it's read or written to, this can respond. It's watching it. It's basically always looking at the value of that. So what we could do here is, instead of saying green as our color, just, blindly, what we could do is say, well, we only want to show green if isRed is false, otherwise we want to show red. And so we can do that with basically a ternary if statement, right? So we could say isRed, if it is red, we are going to do dot red, otherwise we're doing dot green. And so immediately we are over here, and now notice that we've made enough of a change here that this is no longer re-previewing, and we notice that because it says they've been paused. So this is caused by the fact that it notices there's enough there that it needs to do a recompile. So all you have to do is go up here and say resume again, and so you'll see it's rebuilding, and now we're re-previewing. All right. So if we were to say that this started out as true, as an example. Now, again, it's saying a new recompile. Let's do resume. But now, because this is red, it comes out as red. So the reality is the last piece of code that we need to do to change this color is to just come up here into this section where the action is and actually toggle this Boolean. And when we do that, this should change from red to green every time we tap this button. So let's try that. So I can say isRed equals not isRed. And now this will give you another to show you the other thing. So basically what we're viewing here is a view of what has been coded here, but this is not actually a running program yet. So if I tap on this, nothing is going to happen. In fact, when I'm tapping on it, it's really saying, hey, are you tapping on UI elements that you want to edit or modify? So if we want to actually try this out, one way in the old days was to build, completely build it, put it in the simulator. But now we have this little button right here where we can just say run, and now it's executing the code. So if I come over here and tap anywhere on here, because any of this is a button, when I tap, notice now it turns green. If I tap again, it turns red. And why does that happen? Because every time we tap, this toggle occurs. And because we said that this variable is a state variable, this system is always watching that, and it's making those changes. So I contend that if you were to implement this same exact thing in UIKit, it will take more code. And so that'll be another video where I will show you how to do this in UIKit, and you can compare and contrast this code and how easy this is to read and look at versus UIKit code. And the other thing that I think we've demonstrated, which is huge, is our ability to put elements onto our environment over here and have them coded for us right here and go back and forth between the two.